All right, I want to go ahead and walk us through the annotated bibliography prompt. So let me go ahead and click on that in the module here. All right, the annotated bibliography. I want to just start by parsing out the title of this project. So let's break it apart, the words apart. So to annotate, as we know, means to take notes on, right? We're adding our commentary, we're identifying things that stand out as interesting, important, or confusing. We're asking questions of the text, we're jotting down connections maybe to other ideas or other texts or other other things that might relate to that. So that's what annotating means, right? Taking notes on. A bibliography, if we break it apart, you can see we have the first part of the word, biblio. So those of you who might speak Spanish, biblioteca, that's library. Biblio means book. That's where the word Bible comes from, book, right? And then graphy is just a collection in writing, so book collection in writing, more or less. So in other words, this is just a collection of all of our sources, the publication information for the sources. So when we put those things together, it means that we are taking notes on all the different sources we're using. So that's what an annotated bibliography is. So let me go ahead and read through this. An important component of a research project is the annotated bibliography. Annotated bibliographies challenge us to read and assess our sources critically, evaluating both their content and merit, meaning their value. Additionally, because this research process takes considerable time and effort, annotated bibliographies can help keep us on track with our research timeline. Because this project is designed to help us gather sources for Major Essay Project 2, the sources you include in your annotated bibliography should all center on a single topic or issue. So the annotated bibliography is a part of Major Essay Project 2, but it's dealing with the research aspect of it. So it's the same topic. You're researching the same topic both for your annotated bibliography and Major Essay Project 2. But like I said, this is a way for you to help gather your sources and also keep track of your sources and really to make sure you're reading them critically and actually determining if they're valuable. So let me read through how this should look, break it down a little bit. For our purposes, there are 4 components for each annotated bibliography entry, and I'll explain what an entry is momentarily. So the first component is the correct and complete bibliographic information for your source, formatted according to MLA guidelines, just as it would look on a regular works cited page. So that's the first thing. It'll just be how the publication information formatted the way it would look on a works cited page. What makes it an annotated bibliography, though, are these remaining 3 components. So after you have the publication information, you'll follow it with a paragraph here, the second component, which is a brief summary of the source, at least 5 to 7 sentences, wherein the writer details what the source contains, explains what its argument and supporting points are, or offers a description of the source if it does not have an explicit argument. For example, if it's a research report or a piece of research data, it may not have an explicit argument. So say, for example, say they're just findings to an experiment that was conducted. There wouldn't necessarily be a clear argument. It's just, we conducted this experiment and here are the results that we have, right? So in that case, you wouldn't need to explain the argument because there isn't one. You're just saying describing what the source is. But most of your sources probably will have some kind of argument, meaning some kind of position or point of view that the writer is trying to get across. So your first paragraph in the annotation part is just a brief but detailed summary of that source. You'll follow that with an assessment or evaluation of the source's quality, at least 3 to 5 sentences. How valuable is the source? You'll want to explain that, and does the source have limitations? That might be the case in some instances. But really you're just pointing out what is valuable about the source. What points really stand out as strong? Are there connections that the source makes that are very valuable, that you think have use? You might also, like I said, point out some limitations. So maybe there's a question that arose for you as you're reading through and you say, oh, well, I wish that source would have addressed that, in which case you would probably go ahead and try to address that in your own writing, right? But not always. That won't always be the case where you're pointing out limitations. Usually you want to point out what is valuable about the source, and chances are if you're going to be devoting this time and effort, you probably think the source is valuable, right? Otherwise you probably wouldn't be really wasting your time. The final component is a brief but detailed explanation of how the source will fit into your research project. So just 2 to 3 sentences or so. How will it relate to your other sources? How do you plan to use it in your project, or what might it add to your exploration? So in some cases you may not necessarily know how you plan to use it, but you might point out how it connects to another source you found. So you're just kind of speculating on how it fits into the bigger research project, how it connects, how it relates. So for the annotated bibliography, you should provide annotations for 3 sources, 2 of which must be from the library databases. And again, I'm going to post a video that walks you through the library databases. Each annotation should be at least 250 words in length. MLA guidelines apply. However, you do not need to double space your annotated bibliography. So that's the only thing that MLA stipulates, is that it should be double spaced, but this, for the annotated bibliography, we don't need to double space it. It just looks a little neater and saves a little space. That's not necessary. So I have some resources for you, some links. So for more information on annotated bibliographies, here's a brief reading from a book called Everyone's an Author. So if you click on that, it should take you to this. And so you'll just scroll to the part where it talks about the annotated bibliography. So annotating a bibliography, a few paragraphs there. It explains some key features. It continues over on this side. And then here they have a student example of an annotated bibliography entry. So it's just something for you to take a look at. But I have here created an example annotated bibliography entry for your reference. So let's click on this. This is something that should look familiar to you guys. So I color-coded this only to show you the distinction among the 4 components. You do not need to color-code it. You just keep it in regular black font. That's fine. But like I said, I just wanted you to be able to kind of visualize it a little bit more. So here we have the MLA heading. So you have your name, professor's name, course name, and then the date that it is due. So in this case, May 10th. And then I have on my next line my title. So in this case I decided to call it Failing Forward, and it's in quotation marks because this is a phrase that I borrowed from a source we read at the very, very, very beginning of the semester, Kevin Kelly's The Virtues of Negative Results. So the reason I titled this hypothetical annotated bibliography Failing Forward is because that's kind of what the focus of this research is. And then I have colon and then annotated bibliography. Now this has number 1 because there would be more than one, but in this case it's just the whole document is the annotated bibliography. Okay, so we have the publication information just as it would look in MLA format. So right here, Richard E. Miller and Jurecic, those are the authors of the essay on learning from failure, which comes from the book Habits of the Creative Mind. And then, yeah, so publication information for that. Then I have my brief but detailed summary of the source. So I'm just providing a brief but detailed summary of what the focus of that source is. So let me read through it. In this essay, Miller and Jurecic focus on the importance that a student's mindset plays in dealing with failure. They begin their essay with an extended example of children building a sandcastle to demonstrate the way children learn from making mistakes and setbacks. Miller and Jurecic point out that successful college students tend to view mistakes and setbacks as opportunities for growth and learning. They call these students the learners. Students who are not as successful, on the other hand, view mistakes and setbacks negatively and are often discouraged by them. They call this group of students the knowers. Ultimately, Miller and Jurecic make the case that to learn to write in the way they encourage us to in Habits of the Creative Mind, we must be willing to take risks and to learn from our mistakes. So that's my brief but detailed summary of this source. Now down here I have my assessment of the source's quality, so what I think the source does well, and I point out a limitation that the source has. Let me read through that. Miller and Jurecic don't make an explicit connection to Carol Dweck's concepts of fixed and growth mindsets when they discuss the learners and the knowers. It's unlikely that the authors are unaware of Dweck's work, so not making this connection seems like a missed opportunity. Despite this, their argument is well constructed and the examples they use are insightful, especially the sandcastle example and the connection they make to Ken Bain's thesis in his book, What the Best College Students Do. So there I'm pointing out a limitation, and then I'm also pointing out what the source does well. And then finally I have just a brief indication of how I plan to use this and how it connects to other sources. This essay connects very well with Kevin Kelly's short essay, The Virtues and Negative Results, and I plan to tie Miller and Jurecic's ideas to Kelly's point about failing forward. Since Miller and Jurecic did not draw the parallel to Dweck's work, I will also make that connection clear. So I'm just kind of pointing out how I plan to use that source. So all of this right here is an example of one annotated bibliography entry. So you would need to do this 2 more times for 2 more sources. Okay. Now all of this right here should be at least 250 words in length for each annotation entry. Okay, so if you do the math, that's 750 words total between your 3 annotations. But try to balance them out so that we're spending equal amount of time on each source, right? We don't want to be lopsided with that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and then I'm going to point out a couple student examples, and we'll go from there. So stay tuned, y'all.